I can hear myself. I think I can see everyone. I'm no longer a still static image. Of all the people to lose their connection when we do this stream, I'm probably the worst one to have their internet shit out because I have the streaming system up right now. But we are back here, and let's dig right into the idea of Connor McDavid hitting 100 points. It's written next to me here, the McCentury mark. There you go. I pointed to it finally. Nation Dan, I'll start with you since you ended off the last one. Right now, I think CoolBet is the only book that gives you the option to bet on McDavid getting over 99.5 points. Dan, do you think he's going to do it? Is this going to happen?
Yes. For me, it's a foregone conclusion at this point.
Foregone conclusion.
And as the guy that started the year on December the 11th, 2020, saying that he was going to have 99 points, I've got to stick to my guns here. Connor McDavid is the best player in the league. If there's going to be anybody that's going to do it, it's Connor McDavid. So why doubt the guy? You just watched him do that against the Winnipeg Jets, and he's got 5 games against the Vancouver Canucks, who are treading water at best at this point. So, I mean, for me, it's not really a question anymore. It's just when. It's not a question of if, it's when for me.
My argument for this potentially not happening is, by the time they get to those games against the Canucks, there may be pretty much nothing left on the line here. In terms of the Oilers could be locked into second place. They might need to be like, oh, we have to win 2 of our last 5 to secure that spot. And for McDavid, I don't even know if I would risk playing him the last 2 games of the year. I honestly might sit him. So the reason I'm not putting my money on this is because I think there's a chance McDavid might not play all 56. Josh, do you agree or disagree?
No, 100% agree. My heart says yes, McDavid does it easily. If these are 10 important games against, they are important games, but if these are 10 games where you absolutely have to win these games to make the playoffs, and absolutely, I think he does it. But, my head says, is it realistic for him to get 19 and let's say maybe more so 8 or 7 games? Do I think they're going to sit him the last 3 games of the season? No. But is it realistic to think that he could probably only play maybe 13 to 14 to 15 minutes in those games? Yeah, that's probably what's going to end up happening, especially if they already have the second place seed locked up, or maybe even if Winnipeg goes on a heater and then it's guaranteed they're going to be third. So, obviously they're going to want home ice advantage, so they're not necessarily going to take the foot off the pedal going down the stretch here. But, for those last few games of the season, is it more of a priority for the Oilers to get maybe a couple other key guys going? You want to get Nugent Hopkins going, you want to get Cahoon going, you want to keep Draisaitl hot. Is that going to be more of a priority for the Oilers going down the stretch? Yes, probably more so than getting McDavid to 100. And even McDavid referenced it yesterday. So. Yeah.
Connor McDavid was 16 minutes yesterday, had 4 points. I'm just saying, you rest the guy, and it's even worse for the other teams. He comes in and he just lights you up on the power play to guarantee that W. For me, it's just you're right. You guys are absolutely right. They should be resting him, and they probably will be down the stretch. But he is probably more effective with some rest and nothing left to play for, and just go out there and blow it up on a play because you're going to have 2 shifts off afterwards instead of your 1 that you usually have.
Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, Josh kind of touched on it. McDavid's quote last night, he was asked about, what the chase for 100 points means for him. And he said, quote, not a ton. I think we want to play good team hockey down the stretch. I think that's the most important thing. And his focus is on the team. His focus isn't on himself, and it's always been the case when it comes to McDavid. Anytime he gets a question about himself, he's always deflecting. That being said, I don't know how it can't be something that's at least in the back of his mind here down the stretch, right? It's a huge feat for him, and it would be just another great milestone to add on to the cap. It's going to be interesting to see if it really does happen because, are they going to rest him? Are they not going to rest him? That's also $1 million question. He said last night, too, that, he feels he's at his best when he's playing a lot of hockey and when he doesn't have much rest, right? So, for him, he's a guy who likes to get into a rhythm. He likes to play a lot of hockey, and he's a special player. He's not somebody that needs a heck of a lot of rest, right? So
good luck to
see what happens.
Good luck to Dave Tippett trying to tell Connor McDavid that he's going to take a night off. There's 2 guys in this league that I don't think you can say that to, and Connor McDavid is one of them.
I don't think he'll give an option.
Oh, I don't think Connor McDavid decides if he wants to play or not.
Yeah, I think McDavid has a say in it to an extent. I think if McDavid is, let's say he is 100% healthy, because if he's 90% healthy, I would expect him to take the last 2 games of the year off. Let's say he is 100% healthy, nothing nicked up, no ailments or anything. I think where Dave Tippett comes in is he's only playing him 13 minutes a game. And he's knocking down the minutes, and maybe it's not a full healthy scratch thing, and maybe there is some middle to this debate.
But again, what Dan said just a minute ago, he played 16 minutes last night and had 4 points.
Yeah, like he's
a goddamn cheat code out there.
If you're just playing him on the power play, like Dan said, he might still even, like, I don't know, could he reach 100 points? Like, basically just milking them on the power play? Fuck, that'd be something.
I'm just saying, boys, to end this segment off, the McSentry train has left the station, but you guys can always catch up. Mm-hmm. You can always catch up. You can jump on anytime you want. I'll mark down the date that you came in so that we can keep that in mind for afterwards, but the McSentry train is always welcoming.
So right now, I mentioned CoolBet is the only sportsbook that has the McDavid point prop up right now. The odds are minus 133 on him getting over 99.5 points. For those who don't follow betting, that means if you were to lay $100 down on it, you would profit $75 off of the bet. I'll start with Zach and I'll start with you, Josh. Would you lay down your money on that? Would you put your money where your mouth is when it comes to McDavid hitting 100?
Not at minus 133. You know, when I saw those were the opening odds on it this morning, I kind of looked at it and it kind of surprised me. I was like, man, like minus 133, it's not necessarily horrible odds, but if the Oilers are a home favorite at minus 133 against a team like Winnipeg, you're probably going to kind of stay away from that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I saw that at minus 133 and I was like, oh, that kind of scares me off a little bit. Even if it was like minus 110 or got into the plus 105 range, then yeah, I probably would. But just literally strictly based on the fact that I don't think he's going to play the last 2 games of the season, that is why I think minus 133 is a little bit aggressive. The only reason I think they actually set it there, Tyler, is because I think they know that a lot of Oilers fans are going to bet on it. So I think that's why they set it there. I don't think that's actually based on the fact that they don't think, or they do strongly think he's going to get there. I literally just think that they're assuming that every Oilers fan in the world is going to bet on that. So that's why they set it at that bad of odds.
Zach, would you bet on that at minus 133?
Yeah, I'd put a little sprinkle on it. I mean, I think there's still decent enough value there, to make a couple bucks back. But what was the under? Is this like sitting around plus 100 or something?
Plus 105, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's almost just purely from a gambling perspective. I almost think there's a little bit more value in the under there than the over. And same thing for the reasons that Josh mentioned too, right? We don't know if he's going to play through every single game the rest of the year. It's a good chance for CoolBet to make a little bit of money nonetheless on the over there.
And Dan, I think we know your answer. You called it an absolute lock that Connor McDavid would get 200 points.
I think that the caveat, again, like Josh mentioned, to any kind of line that you ever look at is that is a line for the public, not for what they actually think is going to happen. Because Vegas is the only interest Vegas or the sports books have is trying to get even money on either side of the ledger. Yeah. That's it. So just if you don't understand that with betting, go to oddshark.com and check that out. They'll be able to help you out with that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's you're right, Tyler and Josh and Zach. That minus number on him going over 100 is kind of crazy from a betting perspective because it is 19 points in 10 games. But that's just the way that the public is leaning.
Let's move on to our next point here. Yesterday, yes, we got the McDavid magic, but we also got 2 debuts, the NHL debut of Ryan McLeod and the Oilers debut of Dmitry Kulikov. I floated this question out at the end of the Real Life podcast, which neither of you 3 are on, so this will be a fresh one for you guys. If at the end of the year, like let's put on the future goggles, pretend you are sitting down talking about the Oilers once they've been eliminated from the playoffs, whenever that point is. Who do you think will have a bigger impact on this team down the stretch and into the playoffs? Kulikov or McLeod? Zach, I'll let you go first here.
Yeah, and that's actually a great question.
It is like it could be a top 4 D-man versus a really good third line center. Like it's interesting.
I think it's going to come down to the usage. I mean, you look at the game McLeod played last night. He was solid. Like he didn't look like a guy who was playing his first NHL game. Nope. You know, he was smart. He was in great positions all night long. He won puck battles. He drew a penalty. He had a scoring chance or 2. The underlying numbers weren't great in his favor, but he really passed the eye test. One thing I'd be curious to see is, hey, should we maybe give McLeod a look up alongside McDavid down the stretch? McLeod he seems to play a really smart game, and obviously you don't want to get too in over your head here, considering he is a rookie and we're down the stretch into the playoffs, but we still don't know who can be that left winger for McDavid. It looked really good there. If McLeod gets a chance to play up in the top 6, I would say maybe McLeod would have a bit more of an impact. But in the same breath, you look at what Kulikov already did in game 1 alongside Adam Larson. Like, that is a mean defensive pair to have to go up against. And And Josh mentioned this earlier too about Kulikov's game. He seems to be a little bit stronger with puck on his stick than people thought. Again, this is a guy who at 18 years old, started playing in the NHL. He was a high first round draft pick, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And he's got some offense to his game, despite it not really showing up on the score sheet. And of course, hey, you know what? In New Jersey, he played with PK Subban, and Kulikov's role was to play defense solely. So it's a great question. Honestly, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I really was impressed with how often Kulikov was jumping up into the rush and how often he was like getting up into the play a little bit. He, maybe even if he's not the best passer, it seems like he has a bit of that trait of, I know exactly when I can just take 5 strides and get it to the red line and get it deep. And at points that can be just as effective as making a nice cross-ice pass to insert winger here. Dan, if you had to guess, McLeod or Kulikov, who do you think will have a bigger impact?
It's a fun question, Tyler, and I don't want to rip on it too much because it
but you're about to rip on it, so here we go.
Experiment, but I think the reality is it takes a pretty special NHL head coach to look at a guy with 24 games played in the playoffs versus a guy that's played no games in the playoffs. I think you probably see Kyle Turris start in McLeod's spot to start the playoffs.
Really?
Just purely based on... Just purely based on what I know of Dave Tippett at this point. He has his guys that he trusts. He has his veterans that he likes to go to. And so for me, a guy in Kulikov, what he does, and I've been saying it since we picked him up, he's that utility knife on defense. He gives you the ability to change your schematics however you want. Last night was really exciting for me watching him click with Larson immediately. Those two guys just seem to they seem to get it. That's a really important thing for a guy coming into a new team as well, is to just feel comfortable, And so right from the get-go, he's feeling good. I think that Kulikov draws into more games purely based off of the fact that we have a head coach that errs on the side of veteran.
I don't think Ryan McLeod's going to come out of the lineup for the rest of the regular season. So while I agree with you, if Dave Tippett can't trust him, he won't play a lot in the playoffs. And you're right. Tippett is a guy who, we saw it with Russell versus Jones for 40 games now this year, where he clearly trusted Chris Russell, and that's why he played with Adam Larson way more than Jones did. And you can go through the forward lineup and find examples of that as well. What I'll say is I think McLeod I wouldn't be stunned. Like you said, Zach, he didn't look like a guy making his NHL debut last night.
And there's no slight against McLeod.
Well, right, I think over the next 10 games, he's very capable of earning Dave Tippett's trust. And I don't think Dave Tippett, he's a smart guy. I don't think he's just going to default to Turris because he's a veteran. I think he's going to go with who he trusts more. And if McLeod has 10 good games here, there's no reason to think that Tippett won't trust McLeod way more than he trusts Kyle Turris.
Well, and even last night, Tippett had a lot of good things to say about McLeod too. He seemed really impressed with the game that McLeod played, right? So, Turris, in the same breath, he's played 4 hockey games in the last 7 weeks. He's clearly fallen out of favor. And in my eyes, Dan, in my eyes, if the Oilers felt that Kyle Turris was the guy that they wanted in that spot, he'd be playing him down the stretch right now in the lineup, and they wouldn't have called up Ryan McLeod. Right, because you're not going to call up McLeod at the end of the year here to have him sit on the bench. You already have a young guy in Evan Bouchard who should be in the lineup but isn't. So it would, in my eyes, have been a wasted recall to do it that way.
I want to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I want Ryan McLeod to prove me wrong, but I have a feeling in the gut of my gut that Turris plays that first game, and maybe he doesn't even see the ice for the rest of that series. But
what about taking out a guy like Devin Shore and putting in Kyle Turris there?
If we're talking about guys Tippett trust, Shore's in that list.
Yeah, 100%. Shore, Archibald, Haas. Those guys are
Josh,
3.
Before we get too derailed, your take on the Kulikov-McLeod conversation.
I'll just do mine quickly. It's Ryan McLeod. I think the biggest thing about Dmitry Kulikov's game is that the way that he can be effective is if you're not noticing him. He's a shutdown defender in his own end. I think we saw last night he has an opportunity and he has a knack sometimes to jump up in the rush. Sure, he doesn't pass the puck great. I think there was a couple times where the puck was kind of a hand grenade on his stick behind his own net, but that's okay. You take what you have with Dmitry Kulikov and you look at it and you say, yeah, if you want to pair him with Adam Larson, that's a shutdown pairing that you can play on the penalty kill and is going to be effective for you, especially in heavy playoff hockey. But Ryan McLeod, man, he just seems to have the sort of composure with the puck on his stick. I think his first few shifts, I think he was kind of starting to settle in. Maybe there was a little bit of nerves, but once, he kind of got into the flow and the rhythm of the National Hockey League game, I was thoroughly impressed. I think he gets around really good. He's a big body. He kind of adds a little bit of physicality to that bottom six, not necessarily in the way that he's going to run around and just bowl over guys, but he just gets in on the forecheck, and he's also steady behind the net when they're in the opposing end. So I personally, Dan, I don't think Ryan McLeod, I think he starts night one of the playoffs. I think that Dave Tippett really likes him. I think he likes his game. I think they called him up for the reason that they want him to be playing playoff hockey. And if you want to talk about guys that have fallen out of favor with Dave Tippett, I don't think Kyle Turris not only sees a regular season for the rest of the year, but I don't know if we'll see him in playoffs at all. This is a guy that really, he brings nothing to the lineup that Ryan McLeod does. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at Kyle Turris' game and you're putting them side by side with Ryan McLeod, I see nothing besides the fact that he's played NHL playoff games that make me think that Kyle Turris deserves to be in this lineup. Because what has he brought this year? You know what I mean? He doesn't kill penalties. He's not going to play on the power play. So I just don't really know. I would have Devin Shore in the lineup 10 times out of 10 over Kyle Turris, but
I agree. I agree with you completely. I still have this trust issue with NHL head coaches in general too, right? It's the money ball, from the movie, when the manager's going with the guy that he trusts versus the guy that, has all the potential. So I want McLeod to prove me wrong. But
I totally see that, but I really do think that Dave Tippett, I think he likes Ryan McLeod's game. So
yep.
Just
10 games to show him.
Looking here at the Twitter chat, Mike Menier, whose @ handle is Zarly Zalapsky, I think. I lost it here. That's wild. He says they need McLeod to center a productive third line more than they need him as a winger with McDavid. And that is interesting as well, because I do think McLeod could work as a winger. I would almost be interested in seeing if McLeod and Nugent-Hopkins works well together. McLeod, Nugent, Yamamoto, as I throw my pen. If that works, and if you try it and it happens to click, that could open up the door to McDavid and Draisaitl together all playoffs, which I haven't been a huge fan of, because I was like, it depletes the rest of your lineup, and maybe I'm putting way too much stock into what Ryan McLeod could be right away at the NHL level. But like the idea of Nuge centering or McLeod centering with Yamamoto on that right side, and then having the top line beefed up in like a must-win game, I think that's an interesting thing to have a look at it. Just have a look at it.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just gonna say, I think Oiler fans were kind of doing what we do, which is where we get excited about a guy that comes in and does well. And don't get me wrong, I've followed McLeod his whole career now, since he became an Oiler, and there's a lot of promise there. There's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of reason to be excited, but there is still 10 games left to play. He's got some time to show it. He's got some time to blow it, and we'll see what happens. It's a different game than the AHL. It just straight up is. And so I just want us to kind of just take a deep breath about McLeod. He's not the answer necessarily yet. But
so you're not ruling him out of the Conn Smythe conversation yet.
Not saying he can't be. And I think he fits a David Desharnais kind of role really well. That smallish man that can pitch in with some offense. But I think that we're 10 games. We're still 10 games away from this conversation being finished.
I'll say this. Like Dan said, we don't want to put too much stock into Ryan McLeod yet. We've seen one National Hockey League out of him. But I will also say this. I've been a big supporter in the past of McDavid and Draisaitl playing together. I love playing them together. But the problem is that we had no one to play on the second line with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins then. And personally, I think that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a better winger than he is center.
Yeah.
And then also Dave Tippett has said that he wants to play Ryan McLeod in the middle. So if you're going to play McLeod and Nugent-Hopkins together, why not put McLeod in the middle and then have Nuge on one wing and Yamamoto on the other? Sure, that's putting a lot of stock into a guy that's in his first year in the National League. Like, you're saying, okay, you want him to center the second line going into the playoffs. Like, that's crazy.
It's
but
insane.
At the same time, if you can get that top line going and just tell that second line, hey, just like stay even and chip in one every once in a while, then I don't know. Why not? Give it a try.
Yeah. It's a crazy idea, and it's probably a little insane, but sometimes insane ideas work out. Let's wrap up with this. I'm going to head to the Twitch chat where Avery's talking about how long until Charles Barkley shouts out Connor next season with the new TNT deal. The TNT deal is interesting for a handful of reasons. We got into them a little bit yesterday on Real Life. I'm not sure how much we want to dig into it now, but the idea of the NHL getting more attention down south and having a guy like Charles Barkley do something with Connor McDavid, sounds like a sports fan seeing what they do. It's interesting. Floated this out on Real Life. I don't know if anyone will have an answer off the top of their head, so I'll just toss it out there. Who is the NHL's Charles Barkley going to be? Who's going to be that duo if it's Chuck and Shaq coming to the NHL? Like, who could do that in terms of former NHLers? Zach?
Kevin Bieksa.
Yeah, he's probably the
Easy.
answer.
Easy, right? I mean, we've already seen him on the panel in Sportsnet. You know, he's already having that fun, boisterous, playful sort of attitude that we don't really ever see out of sports broadcasters, especially up here in Canada. So I think if it's going to be somebody, I think it's going to be Bieksa.
Brizgalov? Question mark?
Only game.
Is he
I would love to see Brizgalov on a panel somewhere.
Is he broadcast level? Or is he funny in Spurs?
I think he's just that level of like he would give you some kind of, you get like nuggets of insight from him. Yes, they're meme worthy all the time, but I think that's the point, is that you need to have some fun with this stuff. It's not like Charles Barkley is bringing, the A game analysis every day. He's having fun with it. Same thing with Shaq. Like, I know that they have good insights, but they're fun, and they're fun to have on the broadcast. And what's more important than giving your hockey fans the grade A analysis is getting eyeballs again on this sport. And for me, Brizgalov does that kind of thing where it's a hilarious situation, but go watch his interviews on YouTube where he interviewed players at the All-Star game. His stuff is good stuff. It's good, fun, lighthearted stuff, but it's good, like, meme-worthy content.
John Tortorella might be my answer.
Oh.
He was on the panel before with TSN. I just think him, if he were to be like, you know what, I'm done with coaching for good, like I've had enough of it, I'm jumping into broadcasting, and if he had like the I don't give a shit attitude about it, like I'll say anything, I think it'd be great. At Zarly Zalapsky says Scotty Upshaw as well, who's got a decent personality going. Avery
Tyler,
given what? Yeah.
When you guys had Jarmo Kekalainen on, did you ask him if he's going to fire John Tortorella?
No, we did not outright ask Jarmo Kekalainen if he's going to fire his head coach. But his contract's up, right? So I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that things are going to go different.
He's basically trying to play himself out of, or sit players out of his way out of the league. So
if you want to hear a conversation with Jarmo Kekalainen, and it's a good one, Gregor asks some funny shit in it too. That's on episode 22, I believe, of the DFO Rundown, the one that came out last Friday. We're going to wrap up with this. We got time for one more topic. It is the third topic next to me on the board here. Resting players. Zach Lang, is there anyone you think Dave Tippett needs to get into the lineup here down the stretch, or you want to see him get in the lineup down the stretch?
Yeah, Tyler Ennis. I need some more Tyler Ennis in my life, honestly. He's a guy I think should be an everyday NHLer, an everyday player on this team. I think he brings a hell of a lot more to the lineup than Devin Shore does on a regular basis. Obviously, again, the coach trust thing is an issue there, but I think Ennis is a guy that Edmonton needs to find space for in the lineup here, and he's a guy that should be there every night.
Dan, any players you want to see get in here down the stretch?
I think for me, it's more I wouldn't mind seeing certain guys get some rest. There is some guys for me, like Darnell Nurse, I think just deserves a couple days off, especially with this grinding schedule where we have a game every second night now until the end of the year. I think that I'd love to see him get some time off. I want to see Mikko Koskinen get a couple more games. Yeah. I'd like to see Alex Stalock get one here. Hopefully he gets one or two, because there's a guy that, if one of those goalies goes down, he's all of a sudden your backup, and he's, and you need to be able to trust that too. I think that for me, it's get the big minute eaters and not necessarily the McDavids and the Draisaitl's out of the lineup for a game here and there, just to give them a break and rest.
Josh, what do you think?
I wouldn't take Devin Shore out of the lineup, but I would like to see Tyler Ennis draw in for James Neal. Obviously, James Neal only played that one game. Yeah. Well, it was his first game in a while, but James Neal's feet are bricks, man. I like James Neal, but dude struggles getting around. He actually had some flashes last game that were okay, but the forward group I'm not as worried about. There's not really any of those guys that I'm like, oh, they need to come out or they need to come in, because I'm pretty settled on them right now. Obviously, we'd like to see Evan Bouchard get in the lineup. Yeah. Who's going to come out? I don't know. You're not really going to take Ethan Bear out. Of course, the analytics people are going to tell you they want to take Tyson Barrie out, but that goes against his Norris Trophy campaign, so we can't take him out now. He's trending in the right direction.
Norris Trophy campaign. Zach's going to have a stroke on the air.
Can we have two Norris Trophy winners on one team?
We should. They should split it.
Who?
Split it like they split the Masterton or what is it? The Jennings.
Christ, Josh, I need a beer now.
Same.
A nation beer. Delicious nation beer.
This thing's unreal. But yeah, other than that, that's all. buzzing.
I would, if second place in the division's locked up for the last 4 games of the year, or for the last 3 games of the year, I would play Evan Bouchard in every single one of them, and I would say Barry sits 1, Bear sits 1, Larson sits 1. And I'd give them all a little bit of rest because, listen, Evan Bouchard is your 4th best right shot defenseman right now. Slater Cuckoo's health aside, he's your 4th best right shot D-man. One guy goes down in the playoffs, which is very likely to honestly happen at some point over the course of a playoff run. Bouchard needs to draw in. I do not want Evan Bouchard's first taste of game action in like 2.5 months to be a fucking Stanley Cup playoff game. It's basically, I think what Dave Tippett should do here, and here I am telling a great NHL coach how he should run things, but like, I think you identify who your next wave is, your first layer of depth at every position, and you make it a point in the last 5 games of the year that Ennis is getting some looks. I'm making sure, if Kerr is healthy and he's in the line, like that next wave of guys, both up front and on the blue line, everyone has at least some level of comfort jumping into the lineup and has something to go back on a bit. Because I just think you don't want to be throwing guys cold into like game 6 of a series, right? I think that's just where things could get a little messy. This was a lot of fun, as always. We're going to have one of these all the time throughout the playoffs. It's going to be a fun run here. Only 10 games to go in the season. It's honestly kind of flown by here. I mean, 56-game season, granted, we knew it was going to fly by. But guys, thanks for doing this here. My apologies for the technical difficulties for everyone listening, but we'll be back Tuesday for another episode of State of the Nation. See you, boys.